I remember the first time I saw Jennifer. It was at a mutual friend's birthday party, the kind of gathering where laughter echoes and the clinking of glasses punctuates the air. She was standing in the corner, her head thrown back in laughter, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders like a waterfall. It was as if the room dimmed around her. I felt an inexplicable pull, a magnetic force that drew me in. I had never believed in love at first sight, but in that moment, I was a convert. We hit it off immediately. Our conversations flowed effortlessly, filled with shared interests and dreams for the future. Jennifer had this vivacious spirit, a zest for life that was contagious. She loved to explore new places, try new foods, and engage in deep discussions about everything from art to philosophy. I found myself captivated not only by her beauty but by the depth of her thoughts and the passion she brought to every topic. It wasn't long before we were inseparable, navigating the early stages of love with an enthusiasm that felt boundless. As our relationship blossomed, we shared countless adventures. Weekend trips to the mountains, lazy Sundays filled with cooking experiments, and cozy nights spent wrapped in each other's arms. I could see a future with her, one where we built a life together, filled with laughter, love, and the inevitable challenges that life throws our way. It all felt so perfect, so right. Eventually, our whirlwind romance led to the day I asked her to marry me. I proposed on a beach at sunset, the sky painted in hues of orange and pink. A fitting backdrop for what I hoped would be the beginning of our forever. When she said yes, it felt like the culmination of everything I had ever wanted. We planned our wedding with an eagerness that only young lovers can muster, and when the day finally arrived, it was everything I had dreamed of and more. Surrounded by friends and family, we exchanged vows, promising to stand by each other in sickness and in health, in joy and in sorrow. But as the years rolled on, the initial spark of our relationship began to flicker. Life took over, work pressures, the responsibilities of adulthood, and the everyday grind. We both fell into a routine that felt suffocating at times. The playful banter that once flowed freely was replaced by mundane conversations about bills, chores, and schedules. I started to notice the little things slipping away, the spontaneous weekend getaways became rare, and our once vibrant connection felt muted. At first, I tried to ignore it. I convinced myself that every marriage goes through phases, that it was just a natural ebb and flow. But then, something deeper gnawed at my insides. I began to sense a distance between us, an unspoken tension that lurked beneath the surface. Jennifer, once so full of life and energy, seemed distracted, often lost in thought. She started spending more time on her phone, her laughter becoming less frequent. I brushed these feelings aside, attributing them to the stress of life. However, the doubts crept in slowly but surely. It started with small things. I noticed how she would laugh a little too hard at something our friend said, and how her gaze lingered a moment too long. Little hints of intimacy that didn't include me. I found myself questioning every interaction, analyzing every glance and whisper. My instincts screamed that something was amiss, but I refused to believe that the woman I loved could betray me in such a way. Yet, the nagging suspicion grew stronger. I began to piece together oddities, her late nights at work, her sudden interest in new hobbies that didn't involve me, and those weekend outings with friends that she would describe in vague detail. There was a time when I would have supported her need for independence, but now it felt like a veil she was hiding behind. One evening, as I was scrolling through social media, I stumbled across a photo that made my heart race in a way that was not good. It was Jennifer, laughing, her hand on the shoulder of our best friend, Tom. The way they were positioned, their smiles bright and carefree, sent a chill down my spine. I had seen the way Tom looked at her, the lingering glances when he thought I wasn't paying attention. The seeds of suspicion I had planted began to sprout, filling my mind with thoughts I wished I could dismiss. The more I tried to push it out of my mind, the more insistent the thoughts became. I couldn't shake the feeling that my world was crumbling, that the foundation of my marriage was shaking beneath me. The notion of infidelity was a bitter pill to swallow, and yet, here I was, unable to ignore the bitter taste it left behind. The realization that Jennifer might be unfaithful was terrifying. I felt trapped in a storm of confusion and heartache, unable to confront her without concrete evidence. My mind raced, seeking answers, yet my heart ached at the possibility of betrayal. It was a dark place, one filled with fear and uncertainty, and as I looked at Jennifer asleep beside me one night, I knew that I was at a crossroads. I had to either confront her about my growing suspicions or devise a plan to uncover the truth, before it was too late. As the days turned into weeks, the whispers of my suspicions grew louder, echoing in the back of my mind like a relentless drumbeat. I had always prided myself on being a trusting partner, but something about Jennifer's recent behavior gnawed at me. It started with the late nights at work. When we first got married, her job was demanding, but she had always managed to balance work and home life effortlessly. Now, it felt like she was avoiding me, returning home hours after I expected her. Her hair slightly disheveled, her eyes carrying a hint of exhaustion that didn't quite match her story. I remember one particular Tuesday night when she came home close to midnight. I was lying on the couch, half-heartedly flipping through channels, waiting for her to return. When she finally walked in, I could tell something was off. Her smile was forced, and the way she shrugged off my questions about her evening felt rehearsed. "Just a late meeting," she said, brushing past me. But I caught the faint scent of perfume that wasn't hers lingering in the air. It hung like a cloud between us, suffocating my trust. In the following weeks, the pattern continued. I started keeping a mental tally of the nights she stayed late, and soon, it became apparent that her meetings were less about work and more about something else, something I couldn't quite grasp. I tried to tell myself that I was being irrational, that work demands fluctuate, and perhaps she was simply overwhelmed. But the knot in my stomach tightened every time she reached for her phone. Scrolling through messages with a guarded expression. It was those moments of secrecy that began to chip away at my sanity. I noticed her being more protective of her phone, often glancing at it with a flicker of anxiety before swiftly putting it down as if she feared I might see something that would shatter the fragile bubble of our lives. When she received messages, her fingers would fly across the screen, and she'd often step out of the room to respond, laughing softly at something that only she could understand. The laughter echoed in my mind, piercing through the fog of doubt that surrounded me. Who was she texting that could elicit such a reaction? One day, curiosity got the better of me. I couldn't help myself. I picked up her phone while she was in the shower, scrolling through her notifications. I found nothing alarming at first, just the usual social media updates and news alerts. But then I noticed a new app on her home screen, one I didn't recognize. It was a messaging app that boasted end-to-end encryption, making it virtually impossible for anyone to intercept messages. My heart raced at the thought of what she could be hiding, and with each passing moment, I felt my trust eroding like sand slipping through my fingers. The turning point came when I noticed something even more unsettling. She had changed the password to her social media accounts. When I tried to access her Instagram one evening, a message popped up stating, "Password incorrect." I felt a pang of betrayal that was almost physical. I tried to brush it off as a simple oversight, but deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. This was a boundary she had erected, a wall that kept me at bay, and it stung. Weeks passed, and the tension in our house became almost unbearable. I could feel the distance between us growing like a chasm that threatened to swallow everything we had built together. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken words and half-hearted smiles, and every time I reached out to her, I was met with a coolness that felt foreign. The love that once flowed so freely between us now felt constricted, like a river choked by weeds. Then came the day that shattered the illusion entirely. I was at home, trying to distract myself with chores when an anonymous message popped up on my phone. At first, I hesitated to open it, but something inside urged me to look. When I finally did, my heart sank. The message contained a photograph, Jennifer and Tom, laughing together at a restaurant, their faces illuminated by the warm glow of candlelight. The way they leaned toward each other, the intimate angle of the shot, it was as if they were in their world, oblivious to anyone else around them. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the images. There were several more, each one capturing moments of joy that I felt I had been robbed of. A surge of emotions crashed over me: rage, betrayal, heartbreak. I felt as if the ground had been pulled from beneath me, leaving me to flail in a void of disbelief. How could she betray me with the very person I had considered a brother? Tom had always been a part of our lives. A trusted friend who stood beside us during our happiest moments. To see him entwined in this web of deceit was a blow I hadn't prepared for. With every passing minute, my mind raced, grappling with the implications of what I had seen. The evidence was right there, glaring and undeniable, and I could no longer pretend that my instincts were wrong. The anger that simmered within me began to bubble over, and I felt a surge of determination rising to the surface. I needed to confront Jennifer, to force her to acknowledge the truth. But before I could act, a different thought emerged, one that twisted the knife deeper. I could confront her now, but wouldn't it be more satisfying to expose the truth at a time of my choosing? To catch them off guard, to reveal their betrayal not only to me but to the world they had built around their lies? A part of me yearned for revenge, to flip the script and reclaim the power that had slipped through my fingers. With that thought settled in my mind, I began to plot my next move, preparing for a confrontation that would shake the very foundation of our lives. The storm was brewing, and I was determined to navigate it, no matter the cost. The days turned into weeks, each one heavy with the weight of my suspicions. I felt like a lion stalking its prey, waiting for the right moment to pounce. Every time I looked at Jennifer, I was reminded of the betrayal. Her laughter, once a soothing balm, now grated on my nerves like nails on a chalkboard. I wanted to confront her, to lay bare the truths I had discovered, but the thought of that confrontation felt too simplistic. I needed to devise a plan that would not only reveal the truth but would also shatter the illusion she had built around her deception. As I sat on the couch one evening, the glow of the TV flickering in the dim light, a bold idea began to take shape in my mind. What if I could orchestrate a situation that would expose her infidelity, but in a way that caught her off guard? A situation where she wouldn't just face my wrath but would also have to confront the reality of her actions in front of our friends. That's when it hit me, a weekend getaway on a yacht. Tom had a beautiful sailboat, one that he often flaunted during summer barbecues. He had invited us out on multiple occasions, but I had always been too preoccupied with work or other commitments to accept. This time, however, I decided to reach out to him. I would propose a trip, not only to enjoy the sun and sea but to create the perfect stage for my revelation. I could already envision how the evening would unfold, a picturesque sunset, laughter echoing against the waves, and then, with a well-timed toast, I would pull back the curtain on their secret lives. I texted Tom, suggesting we take a weekend trip together. To my delight, he responded enthusiastically, eager to organize the outing. "Let's make it a family affair," he suggested, and I immediately agreed. I could feel a thrill of excitement coursing through me. This would be my moment of reckoning. As I approached Jennifer with the idea, I kept my voice casual, trying to mask the intensity of my true intentions. "Hey, how about we take a trip with Tom and his family on the yacht this weekend? It could be fun." I watched her face carefully, searching for any signs of discomfort. She paused for a moment, perhaps weighing her options, before her face broke into a bright smile. "That sounds amazing. I'd love to." Inside, I felt a rush of triumph. Her enthusiasm only reinforced my resolve. I knew that this trip would provide the perfect backdrop for the truth to unfold. Little did she know, I was already plotting my next move. The weekend arrived swiftly, and I felt a mix of excitement and apprehension as we drove to the marina. The sun hung high in the sky, casting shimmering reflections on the water, and a sense of anticipation filled the air. I glanced at Jennifer, who was chatting animatedly about the trip, seemingly oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface. Tom and his family were already there, laughing and loading supplies onto the boat. Their happiness palpable. Once on board, we settled into the comfortable seating, and the sails caught the wind, pushing us away from the dock. The scent of saltwater mixed with the aroma of grilled food wafting from the small barbecue on deck, creating an atmosphere of carefree joy. But beneath my facade of calm, I was a volcano waiting to erupt. As we sailed further from shore, I noticed the dynamics shifting between Jennifer and Tom. They exchanged glances that lingered just a moment too long, their laughter a touch too intimate. It was subtle, but I could see the tension beneath their interactions. At one point, I caught them leaning closer together, sharing an inside joke that I was not privy to. My heart raced, the evidence of their betrayal flashing before my eyes like a red warning light. I excused myself to the lower deck, where I could breathe and strategize my next move. I knew I had to play this right. I needed the perfect moment to unveil the truth. As I listened to the laughter and music from above, I felt an overwhelming wave of satisfaction wash over me. This was my chance to turn the tables, to catch them in their lies without them ever seeing it coming. After a few hours of sailing, we anchored at a secluded spot, the water calm and inviting. It was here, in this idyllic setting, that I planned to execute the first part of my scheme. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the deck, I gathered everyone for dinner. The air buzzed with laughter and chatter. The perfect cover for what was about to unfold. I poured drinks and shared stories, keeping the atmosphere light and fun. But inside, I felt a growing tension. I could see the way Jennifer occasionally glanced at Tom, her eyes filled with unspoken words, and it fueled my desire for revelation. The moment was nearing, and I could feel the energy shift as the sun sank lower in the sky. With the stage set and my heart racing, I prepared for the next act in this drama. I couldn't wait to make my toast. To let the truth spill forth like the wine in our glasses. The yacht bobbed gently on the water, a sanctuary of secrets and lies. Little did Jennifer and Tom know, their world was about to be turned upside down, and I was the one holding the cards. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue across the water, we gathered around the dining table on the yacht. The atmosphere was infused with the scent of grilled seafood and the tang of lemon, mingling with the salty breeze that drifted through the open space. Laughter echoed among us as Tom expertly served the food, his easy demeanor creating an air of camaraderie that almost made me forget the tension brewing inside me. Jennifer sat across from me, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the lanterns strung above us. She looked radiant, wearing a light sundress that swayed gently in the evening breeze. The flickering candlelight danced in her eyes, and for a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of longing for the woman I had fallen in love with. But that feeling was swiftly overshadowed by the gnawing anxiety churning in my gut, a reminder of the betrayal I was poised to expose. As the conversation flowed, I watched her closely. She laughed at Tom's jokes, her smile genuine, but there was something in the way she looked at him that sent a jolt of anger through me. It was a familiarity, an intimacy that shouldn't exist between them, not with me sitting right there. I could see the way her body leaned slightly in his direction. Her hair falling over her shoulder as she leaned in to whisper something in his ear. It felt like a dagger twisting in my heart, and I struggled to maintain my composure, to keep my voice steady as I joined in on the conversation. Everyone else seemed blissfully unaware of the undercurrents swirling beneath the surface. The laughter and light-hearted banter continued, punctuated by clinking glasses and shouts of cheers. As we toasted to friendship, love, and the beautiful evening ahead. I forced a smile, trying to fit into the fabric of their happiness, but inside, I was a tempest, waiting for the right moment to unleash the storm. As the plates were cleared and the sun surrendered to twilight, I knew it was time to make my move. My heart raced, a mix of adrenaline and dread coursing through me. The atmosphere shifted slightly as I stood up, the laughter subsiding as I raised my glass. All eyes turned to me, curiosity and expectation flickering across their faces. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady despite the chaos within, "I want to propose a toast." I paused for effect, allowing the weight of my words to hang in the air. "To friendship that can withstand any betrayal." The words hung like a heavy fog, thickening the air around us. The jovial mood froze, laughter dying on their lips as they processed the statement. I could see the color drain from Jennifer's face, her eyes widening in realization. It was the moment I had waited for, the climax of my plan unfurling before me like a grand performance. For a heartbeat, there was silence, a heavy, suffocating silence. I could feel the tension ripple through the group, a palpable shock that left them momentarily speechless. Jennifer's gaze darted from me to Tom, the betrayal flashing in her eyes like a siren wailing through the night. Tom's face contorted, confusion etching itself into his features as he grasped the implications of my words. The realization struck them both like a thunderclap, and I relished in the chaos brewing before me. A wave of emotion washed over me, anger, exhilaration, and a surge of adrenaline that coursed through my veins like fire. I felt powerful and in control of the narrative that had spiraled out of my grasp for far too long. As their expressions morphed from shock to guilt, I savored the moment, a twisted satisfaction blooming within me. "Jake, what do you mean?" Jennifer's voice quivered, breaking the silence. She looked at me, her facade crumbling as the weight of the truth descended upon us all. I could see the panic rising in her eyes, the realization that her secret was out and that there was no way to spin this back into the comforting shadows. I took a slow breath, allowing the tension to stretch out even longer. I had them right where I wanted them, trapped in their web of deceit, exposed for the world to see. The others around the table shifted uncomfortably, glancing at each other, unsure of how to navigate this new reality. Tom opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. I could see his mind racing, trying to formulate a defense, a justification for the betrayal that hung thick in the air. But there was no defense to be made. I had caught them in the act, and the truth was an unforgiving judge. "Let's talk about this," Jennifer stammered, her voice desperate, as if she could charm her way out of the situation. "We can explain," but I shook my head, a cruel smile forming on my lips. "No, there's nothing left to explain. You've made your choices, and now we all get to deal with the consequences." A murmur rippled through our friends, their unease palpable as the reality of the situation settled in. I felt the thrill of vindication surge through me. My plan had worked. The truth was out in the open, and now it was time for them to face the fallout of their actions. As I looked around the table, I could see the shifting dynamics, the once warm camaraderie unraveling before my eyes. In that moment, I understood the power of the words I had spoken, and the impact they would have not just on Jennifer and Tom, but on our entire friendship circle. The yacht rocked gently on the waves, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within our hearts. I had unleashed the truth, and there was no turning back now. This evening was only the beginning, a prelude to the chaos that was about to unfold. As my words hung in the air, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Jennifer's face flushed a deep crimson, a stark contrast to her usually radiant complexion. I could see the heat rising from her collar, her eyes wide and betraying the panic within her. The laughter that had filled the air moments before evaporated, leaving behind a tension so thick it felt suffocating. Tom, on the other hand, shifted uncomfortably in his seat, beads of perspiration forming on his brow as he tried to process the shock of the moment. The silence that followed was deafening. I felt a rush of exhilaration as I leaned back in my chair, savoring their discomfort like a fine wine. I had spent countless nights replaying this moment in my mind, and now that it was here, it felt even more powerful than I had imagined. I reveled in the power of revelation, the satisfaction of turning their world upside down. I decided to capitalize on their disarray, to push them further into the corner. "So, how long has this been going on?" I asked, my voice steady and calm, contrasting sharply with the chaos swirling around us. The question hung in the air, an accusation wrapped in curiosity, and I watched as Jennifer's eyes darted to Tom, searching for an escape. "What do you mean, Jake?" she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. I could hear the tremor in her tone, the desperate attempt to regain control of the situation. "This isn't what it looks like." "Oh?" I replied, a sardonic smile creeping onto my face. "Because it looks to me like you've been playing both sides. A loving wife by day and a deceitful lover by night. Care to explain how you managed to balance that?" Jennifer opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. Instead, she pressed her lips together, her expression a mixture of anger and fear. I turned my gaze to Tom, who was now visibly sweating, his brow glistening under the soft lights of the deck. "And you, Tom," I continued, my voice dripping with accusation. "You were supposed to be my best friend. What do you have to say for yourself?" Tom fumbled for words, his hands trembling slightly. "Jake, he began, but I cut him off, the adrenaline surging through me, pushing me to press harder. "Don't, Jake, me," I snapped, my voice rising slightly. "You think I would just let this slide? That I wouldn't notice the way you two look at each other? The late nights, the secret texts? You thought I was blind to all of it?" Their faces shifted from shock to guilt, and I felt a sense of triumph swell within me. This was the moment I had envisioned, the climax of my carefully laid plan, and I couldn't help but feel vindicated. I had been the one left in the dark, yet here I was, shining a spotlight on their hidden truths. The evening dragged on, the once jovial atmosphere now replaced with a palpable tension. I could see the way they exchanged furtive glances, filled with confusion and shame. Tom shifted in his seat, attempting to regain his composure but failing miserably. The laughter of our friends faded into the background, replaced by the sound of silence punctuated only by the gentle lapping of the waves against the hull of the yacht. As I continued to stare them down, I noticed the way Jennifer's hands trembled slightly as she reached for her glass. She took a sip, but I could see her throat tightening, the reality of the situation weighing heavily upon her. I could almost hear her thoughts racing as she scrambled to find a way to diffuse the situation, to redirect the focus away from their betrayal and onto anything else. Jake, please, let's just enjoy the evening, she finally implored, her voice tinged with desperation. We can talk about this later, in private. I shook my head, a smile playing on my lips. Oh, no, I don't think so. This isn't something we can just brush under the rug. This needs to be addressed right here, right now. The weight of my words settled heavily in the air, and I could see the realization dawn on them both. They had been caught, and there was no escape from the consequences of their actions. As the seconds ticked by, the silence grew more uncomfortable, their unease palpable. The remainder of the evening was a delicate dance of avoidance and tension. As the sun set and darkness enveloped us, the once vibrant atmosphere turned into an awkward shroud of silence. I watched as our friends tried to make small talk, but the laughter was forced, the joy absent. It was as if an invisible wall had descended upon us, separating the exposed couple from the rest of the group. Jennifer and Tom exchanged furtive glances, their expressions a mixture of confusion, shame, and regret. I could see the guilt etched on their faces, a silent acknowledgement of the web they had woven. They were trapped, and they knew it. I felt a strange satisfaction wash over me as I observed their discomfort. This was the reckoning I had envisioned, the moment where their carefree facade crumbled, leaving behind only the raw, jagged edges of their betrayal. I realized they had underestimated me, had thought I would be the oblivious husband, blissfully unaware of the truth lurking just beneath the surface. As I watched them squirm, the realization hit me. They hadn't expected me to expose their secrets in such a public way. It was a revelation that stirred a sense of power within me, the thrill of having taken control of my narrative. I had turned the tables on them, shifting the focus from their deceit to the consequences they now faced. As the evening wore on, the tension continued to mount, like a thick fog settling over us. I caught glimpses of Jennifer's face, flushed with embarrassment, and Tom's eyes, darting around as if searching for a way to escape the inevitable fallout. I wondered what they would say to each other later. Once we were no longer surrounded by friends, would they attempt to deflect blame? Would they try to minimize the damage? I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication, knowing that I had forced them to confront their reality. There was a satisfaction in watching them unravel, their once solid friendship cracking under the pressure of their actions. It was poetic justice, the consequence of their betrayal played out in the open, where everyone could witness the destruction they had wrought. As the stars began to twinkle above us, I felt a deep sense of closure settling within me. This was not just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my power and dignity. They had tried to steal that from me, but I had fought back, and now I stood strong amidst the chaos. Though the evening was fraught with discomfort, I couldn't help but feel a sense of liberation. The truth was finally out, and there was no going back for any of us. As I looked around the table, taking in the shocked expressions of our friends, I knew that things would never be the same again. The bond we had shared had been irrevocably altered, and I was ready to face whatever came next, knowing I had fought for my truth and reclaimed my strength. In the days following that fateful evening on the yacht, the weight of what had transpired settled heavily on my shoulders. The once vibrant connection I had shared with Jennifer faded like a distant memory, a mirage dissipating in the harsh light of reality. Our relationship, once a tapestry woven with love and trust, had unraveled, leaving behind only frayed threads and a painful void. Jennifer reached out to me repeatedly in the days after the trip, her voice filled with a mixture of desperation and regret. "Jake, can we talk?" she would plead, her messages filled with longing and an eagerness to explain. But each time I received her texts, a wave of anger washed over me. How could she want to talk? What more was there to say after I had laid bare the truth? The betrayal loomed between us like a chasm, unbridgeable and dark. When we finally sat down to speak, the tension was palpable. We met at a small cafe, a place where we had shared countless moments, but now it felt foreign and charged with resentment. I watched as she fidgeted with her hands, her gaze darting around the room as if seeking a safe escape from the reality we were forced to confront. "Jake, she began, her voice trembling as she searched for the right words. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. It was a mistake. I was lost, and I thought I could find my way back." I stared at her, anger boiling beneath the surface. You thought you could just toy with my heart and then come back like nothing happened? What about Tom? Did he mean nothing to you? Each word dripped with accusation, my emotions raw and exposed. I never wanted to hurt you, she replied, her eyes filling with tears. It just happened. I didn't plan for it. Her words were a dagger, twisting deeper with each syllable. The heartache was palpable. The very essence of our bond had been corrupted. I could see the guilt etched on her face, but the damage was done. The trust that had once been our foundation had crumbled into dust, leaving me feeling empty and betrayed. It's too late for apologies, Jennifer, I replied coldly, my voice devoid of the warmth it had once held. You made your choices, and now you have to live with the consequences. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the realization dawning on her face. The understanding that our relationship had reached a point of no return. The passion we once shared had been extinguished, replaced by a bitter truth that hung in the air like a ghost, haunting us both. In the days that followed, I found myself consumed by a mixture of satisfaction and sorrow. I had taken control of my narrative, exposed the truth, and felt a sense of vindication at that moment on the yacht. Yet, as I navigated the aftermath, I couldn't shake the feeling of loss. My friendship with Tom was also in ruins, shattered by the betrayal we had all witnessed. We had once been inseparable, a tight-knit trio bound by shared experiences and laughter. But now, that bond lay in tatters, a painful reminder of what had been lost. I couldn't help but reflect on the fragility of relationships. What had once seemed so secure had crumbled in an instant, leaving me with scars that would take time to heal. I realized that honesty, while often painful, was the cornerstone of any meaningful connection. Secrets and lies had poisoned our bond, creating fissures that ultimately led to our downfall. In the end, I had learned a harsh lesson about trust. The consequences of deception stretched far beyond the individuals involved. They rippled through our circle of friends, leaving everyone affected. As I navigated this new reality, I recognized the importance of transparency in all relationships, even when the truth is difficult to confront. Though the path ahead was uncertain, I resolved to embrace honesty moving forward. I didn't want to repeat the mistakes of the past. The pain of betrayal would linger, but I hoped to find solace in the knowledge that I had reclaimed my voice and exposed the truth, however painful it may have been. In the end, the yacht trip marked a turning point in my life. It had revealed the depths of betrayal, but it had also illuminated the importance of authenticity and trust. I vowed to carry this lesson with me, navigating future relationships with a newfound awareness of the delicate balance between love, loyalty, and honesty. Though the scars remained, they would serve as a reminder of the strength I had found in the face of betrayal, and the power of truth in forging deeper, more meaningful connections. After that disastrous evening on the yacht, my friendship with Tom crumbled like a house of cards. The betrayal was too profound, too painful to overlook, and while we had once shared countless memories, they now felt tainted by the weight of deceit. In the days following our confrontation, I distanced myself from him. Every time I thought about reaching out, I was reminded of how he had crossed an unforgivable line. He had been my best friend, the one person I confided in, and the thought that he had betrayed that trust in such a visceral way left me seething with resentment. Tom tried to reach out, sending me texts filled with apologies and pleas for forgiveness. "Jake, I messed up. I can't express how sorry I am. I never meant for any of this to happen." Each message felt like salt in a wound, reopening the pain I was trying to process. I couldn't bring myself to respond, my heart heavy with disappointment and betrayal. One day, several weeks later, I unexpectedly crossed paths with him at a local coffee shop. My heart raced as I entered, seeing him sitting at a corner table, staring into his coffee like it held all the answers to his mistakes. I hesitated at the entrance, contemplating whether to turn around and leave. But something pulled me forward, a mixture of anger and unresolved feelings. As I approached his table, he looked up, surprise evident in his eyes. "Jake," he said, standing up awkwardly. "I didn't think I'd see you here." "Neither did I replied, my voice cool and detached. "What do you want, Tom?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair, his expression one of deep regret. "I wanted to apologize in person. I know I messed up. I've been trying to process everything, and I never wanted to hurt you." I could see the genuine remorse in his eyes, but it did little to soothe the anger simmering within me. "You betrayed my trust, Tom. You and Jennifer. It's hard to even look at you right now." "I know. I'm not asking you to forgive me right away," he said, his voice tinged with vulnerability. "But I miss our friendship. I miss you." The sincerity in his tone struck a chord within me, but the wounds were still fresh. "You had everything, your friendship with me, your family, and you threw it all away for a moment of weakness," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "How can I trust you again? How can I go back to the way things were?" He opened his mouth to speak but closed it, the weight of my words settling heavily between us. "I don't know, Jake. I just wish I could take it back." There was a long silence, the air thick with unspoken feelings. I felt a conflict raging inside me. Part of me wanted to forgive him, to rekindle our friendship, but another part couldn't shake the betrayal. "Maybe one day," I finally said, my tone softer. "But right now, I need time. I need to figure things out." He nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. Though disappointment lingered there too. "I get it. Just know that I'm here whenever you're ready." With that, I turned to leave, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness wash over me. The door to our friendship had not fully closed, but it was ajar, allowing the air of possibility to seep in. As the weeks turned into months, Tom and I maintained a fragile distance. We'd occasionally bump into each other at mutual friends' gatherings, exchanging polite nods but avoiding any deep conversations. I could see the toll the situation had taken on him. The spark that once filled his eyes was dimmed, replaced by a shadow of regret. It wasn't until a year later, during a mutual friend's birthday party, that we found ourselves sharing a moment of genuine connection. I had arrived late, the party already in full swing, and as I entered, I caught a glimpse of him laughing with others. There was a sense of familiarity in that laughter that tugged at my heart. After a few drinks and some small talk, I finally mustered the courage to approach him. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "It's been a while." "Yeah, it has," he replied, his expression a mixture of relief and apprehension. "How have you been?" We talked for a while, easing into a comfortable rhythm. It wasn't like before, but it felt good to share a few laughs. As the evening wore on, we found ourselves reminiscing about our past adventures, the memories flooding back, evoking a warmth that had been missing for so long. That night, I realized that while our friendship would never return to its former state, there was potential for a new beginning. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, it means recognizing the pain and choosing to move forward, whether together or apart. As time went on, we began to rebuild our friendship, albeit cautiously. We learned to navigate the waters of our new relationship, marked by the scars of our shared history. While the trust would take time to fully restore, we found solace in the understanding that our past mistakes had shaped us into better people. Ultimately, I learned that friendships can endure even the most profound betrayals, but they require effort, vulnerability, and a commitment to honesty. Though the past still lingered in our conversations, it no longer defined us. We were moving forward, slowly but surely, building a new foundation based on the lessons we had learned through our trials. Our bond was no longer just built on shared laughter and adventures. It was now fortified by resilience and the understanding that life's complexities often test our connections. In that way, we emerged from the darkness stronger, learning to appreciate the beauty of second chances and the importance of being honest. Not just with each other, but with ourselves.